The Emperor sits on his golden throne. The galaxy is torn in two by demonic powers. Orcs and Tyranids threaten the galaxy as a whole as ancient empires fight for control of lost lands. It is the 41st millennium, and there is only war. Now, you probably have actually heard of 40K, let alone if you actually play the games or tabletop. And I'm not really going to go to lore or specific stories of 40K, as I am not a lore video person. I might go into some detail about certain units if they pique my interest, but nothing more than that. And if you're one of those unchecked heresy, you can't play Tau because there's Xenos, Emperor's number one, get out. You're the sole reason, not the sole reason, but a reason people don't want to get into this series as a whole. Now, if you're not already a fan of the series, you may have heard about how sort of infamous 40K is to get into, as the tabletop is ridiculously expensive, with some armies and units ranging in hundreds to thousands of dollars to build, even just very small. Now, if you're not already in that community or willing to spend little by little just to get a small army going, it's extremely or straight to impossible to get into it without going broke. There is some games that do kind of help scratch that itch, which is exactly what I'm talking about now with battlesector. Now, to talk about battlesector, I will have to talk about the tabletop a little bit. You don't need to have played it to understand what I mean. It's more just comparing, hey, this thing is in tabletop, but this is how battlesector does it. Just that kind of thing. Not to need to worry. If you haven't played it or you've watched it and you don't understand what I'm talking about, it's not really a big deal. Now, if you've played games like Command & Conquer or XCOM, then you kind of have an idea of how to play this game. Controlling your army, upgrading them, adding more units, or taking out units if you need to. And depending on the scenarios you picked, which there are multiple of, or the two campaigns, you beat the objectives and then move on. Depending on how you do that is all up to you, as you have many different armies from 40K to do it. Not all of them just yet, they're adding more slowly, but you have enough so far to play how you want to play. The two campaigns have you playing either as Blood Angels fighting Tyranids and Sisters of Battle fighting Orcs. There's not really an important story, it's just kind of Blood Angels, they're training new people, and they're fighting Tyranids because Tyranids are doing something. Same thing with the Sisters of Battle. They're sent there to find something, and the Orcs are there doing their WAG thing. You know how it is if you know 40K. Now, besides the two campaigns, you have three different alternative game modes for more shorter, one-sitting kind of stuff. You have Crusade, where you conquer a planet or multiple, depending on the difficulty, and upgrade your troops alongside that, while also getting minor upgrades for them as well, like damage boosts, more armor, making them cheaper, that kind of stuff. You have Demonic Incursion, where you're defending against demons of Khorne, and you have to hold 1 point, and rather than upgrade armies, you call in more as it comes, and you don't really get to upgrade them as much. Then you also have Planetary Supremacy, similar to Crusade, but you're fighting two other armies specifically, hoping to get to their home base and destroy them while conquering little sections of the planet. The actual gameplay and objectives aren't super in-depth or different from the tabletop, but sort of helps makes the game more playable, at least to me. You have Annihilation, which is kill the other guys. Fuck them. Capture points, hold a point, siege, we have to grab points from defenders. There is some nuance between them, but it's nothing really more than just holding a point for 2 turns instead of 0 turns to start getting points from it. Much like the tabletop, the specific areas are less of the focus of the game. Besides being a way to win it, it is still more of a making your army, having fun, and seeing what they can do and what you can improve on with them. Sadly, if you are a fan of the tabletop, there is no detachments for the army, so you won't get specific bonuses or upgrades from that. But to kind of help alleviate that, you do get every unit that the army is known for. Not for every army just yet, they add units more and more over time. You can build your own altogether, or you can be boring and play the meta like, oh, this is the best one for this specific game mode. I win, GG's. Another thing they do different is how attacks work. Where in the tabletop, you roll to see if you hit, then you roll damage, and then the defenders roll to see if they get hit and see how much damage they actually take. And then, the armor and a bunch of other stuff. Nonsense. No, this game instead uses a classic on chance system, which then adds the damage. Which weapons have a varied damage that can range from like 1 to 3, or 4 to 8, or 2 to 5, that kind of stuff. And then depending on the unit you're attacking with, that depends on the armor. Like obviously, a bolt pistol from Commissar is not going to do shit to a dreadnought with plate armor and 300 health points. Another thing you have to worry about when attacking in this one, kind of like the tabletop, is how many models are in a unit. For example, the Guardsmen, one of my favorite armies, their basic guards have 15 to 10, something like that. I don't really want to count. You can count here. Uh, so each one does about, let's say, like 4 or 5 attacks. Well, if you have just one, he does just 4 or 5 attacks. But if you have all 10, that's 50 attacks. Yes, they do low damage, but you get an unarmored opponent that has low health, that motherfucker dead, and then your big boys can focus on the other big boys. Your Royal Dorn can melt their mechs or their dreadnoughts while your guardsmen deal with all the little stuff. Another way battlesector differentiates itself from the tabletop is there's base movement, so no rolling to see if you can make a big charge or if you can move way farther than you could before. Instead, tends to be 4 to 5 for most units, with some having ways to increase that, or some having way more than others. Speaking about army management now, they've yet to add every major faction in the game so far. We have Blood Angels, Tyranids for the base game, and the rest you need to buy, being Orcs and Battlesectors will come as packed together, which is why they're a bit more expensive, and their campaign. Necrons, Tau, Ultramarines, Corn Demons, Black Legion, and Astra Militarum. My favorite! Now, each base game army outside of the Blood Angels and Tyranids are $15 each, besides the Battlesectors and Orcs, which come in a package together for about $30. This does differentiate between taxes and where you live, all that kind of stuff. Now, that does make you also have to think like, ooh, do I really want to buy these units, as I don't even know if they're going to be worth it or if I even going to like them. And for me personally, I don't really care for Ultramarines or Tau in gameplay sense. I do like their lore, but not gameplay. So I decided not to buy them. Now, I'm not going to go into every detail about every army. You can look up other videos of that for yourself. But I will talk about like minor stuff about them if they come up and as they come up. One thing I will say right off the bat, though, is while most factions have a decent amount, if not most of the units they are known for, Corn Demons, or Demons of Corn, however you want to say that, got absolutely shafted in that department, having very little to kind of differentiate themselves from players. They only have their bloodletters, their demon princes, and that kind of stuff. Your basic melee units, hit big, go big kind of thing, not their vortex beast or their siege beast, anything like that. They have one range unit, and it's not even that good at all. And that might not sound bad, as melee is pretty good, but there are times when either melee is the wrong thing to do because you need to hold a point, or there's a unit like the Tau or Awesome Militarum who, you're trying to approach them, they're going to have 20,000 units with Overwatch on that's just going to blast you and defeat your army. They don't even have things like the Jackals or other Corn Berserkers, not even units for the specific army, let alone other demons, the 4 demons units. This could be with Games Workshop kind of greed and being super iffy of letting models be used in games, or something else I'm unaware of. Either way, it makes what should be a very fun army, and what is one of my favorite armies in tabletop to watch especially, boring and basic. I can barely play one game before I'm like, okay, I want to move on. Now, I'm going to get my last 2 big major critiques about the game before I talk positive, and that is the models, more specifically the reuse of them, or how they look, and the sound, as many of the sounds are reused or way overtuned or in some way that it just becomes annoying. I'll start with the models first, because I'm a hack and I'll use the sounds as a segue into the music and whatnot. Now, making models of the tabletop is already going to be an issue, as many of them are more detailed, especially for units like Guardsmen or Scarabs, who are used as a wall units you let die, so you want lots of them. This can create an issue with running the game, or if the devs are on crunch and can't be put much detail into the models. So they made a few presets and used them, which isn't bad itself. I mean, I'm not going to paint Guardsmen personally as they all look the same, or paint the same Ultramarine 400 times, despite them looking the exact same. Now, the issue that comes to mind immediately is the Tau specifically, where they have the Breachers and the Fire teams, and they are damn near the exact same, except one little paint on their shoulders and their gun barrels are different. And this wouldn't be an issue if the breachers weren't your classic shotgun, get in, take out big units and leave, while the fire teams are your basic mid to long range support units. Those are some issues I have with how they handle certain models' extra features. Like with the Necrons, their Overlord has this little orb thing they carry around, and rather than it be floating around or they only carry it for certain animations, he holds it all the time. Idle animations, shooting animations, melee animations, all the time. And it looks really weird, especially when you're doing the model viewer, when you're doing army management. It just looks weird. Now, onto my biggest issue with the game, which is the sound. To get the bad out of the way, there's plenty of reused sounds that don't entirely fit in with what is being used or done, but more important to me is the fact that some of it is either mixed weird or it's loud as hell, or so quiet I don't hear it half the time. The worst of it is, again, sadly, I'm not trying to pick, I'm just pointing it out, is the Tau. They have these little drones that constantly make these loud sound when being hit, which is fine for some units, but if you have multi-hitting units, they can stack on top of each other and just make it louder and louder and louder until the animation is done.
Right in the gob! Right in the gob!
Speaking on other loud noises, there's also the corn demon's bloodthirster, who during army management will sometimes has this little roar animation where he just looks up and roars because he's angry, grr. But man, he does not know when to shut the fuck up. Besides those issues, the sound design in the game is honestly great, with bolters sounding punchy but not too loud when you have multiple units firing at once, and different bolters sounding different, so the Sister Battles bolters sound different than the Ultramarines bolters, same with the Commodor's bolt pistols. Chain swords, which have the little rev up whenever they're attacking, which is a bit weird. That's revving when it hits, but that's whatever. And jetpacks have the same sound no matter which unit you're using, which can be an issue if you really aren't paying attention, but I never really cared for it. It still sounds like a jetpack is being used, which is what I care about. Now, many of the units are voiced if they have voices, and in the campaigns, it is all voiced cutscenes. And most of these are really good, with it being hard to find a specific one I should have hate.
Time flows in contradictions since the invasion. There's an unexpected slowness in the aftermath of an impossible victory. A languid sweetness of air, tasted by the hapless victor. Heavy fire support!
Fell. An appropriate name, given the tragedies that befell our fellow sisters of our martyred lady. But we will not allow their sacrifice to be forgotten amongst the dust of its dead foundries.
Praise the Emperor and pass the ammunition.
This is my Ripper.
Waiting for orders, sir.
Awaiting your orders.
I can't really hate any of this. It's more just how they're repeated. Even though Helbert, he says some things. Mostly cries in agony and pain, but that's potato, right? My only real issue is how a lot of the voice lines are repeated for really no reason, especially when they take hits. And the game can bug out sometimes on playthroughs where it'll play a voice line from a faction you either fought earlier and now you haven't seen for your army, or just play the same one no matter where you are or what unit you have. The music is also done fairly well, which is kind of bad if you are mostly play Warhammer games, as a lot of the music is really good, but still good enough. It's somewhat generic, but each faction still has their own unique music, and while it does loop, I don't really notice it that much. It doesn't loop too bad. Now, onto the actual gameplay, which I don't know why I waited this long to talk about, but here we are. Again, if you played XCOM, you know how this game kind of rolls, where you command certain amount of units, which does increase on an army cap limit. But the games, for most of it, make you unlock specific units, with the only one that really doesn't wait for you to unlock it and more just has you try and find it is Demonic Incursion, but that's because it's an entirely different game mode. Now, you can't just build whatever army you want right away. There is an army cap limit into your points, and each unit is a point. So you can't have one guardsman, a tank commander, 30 Rogodorns, and 45 other Lehman Russes. You can't do that. You have to mix in with the different classes, which are not really classes per se, more what kind of roles they fulfill with your fodder, main damage, speed, transport, and big boys, and the leaders which provide their own uses, buffs, and debuffs to the enemy and you. Each faction handles them differently, so how you build them together up to you and what the faction is good at. Each unit has a set amount of movement and action points. Like XCOM, you can use your AP, I'm showing it AP, short for action points by the way, chat, to go further, but have no Overwatch or other actions. Not all actions cost AP. Like most tanks, specifically the Lehman Russ and Rogodorns, have lots of guns besides their main cannon, costing none, while other non-attacks like the Necrons teleport cost 1 AP. Each units have their own vision as well, as there is a fog of war, so you cannot just know where everyone is right away and immediately basically win the game if you're long range. Positioning, like most of these games, is also very important, as in this game, certain weapons have a sweet spot in range where they are most likely to hit, or melee units doing more damage to a unit they are flanking and having a higher crit chance. For example, most Marines bolters have the range of sweet spot of 3, but they can shoot further to I think 5 or 6. This is also why you can turn your units for free, as if they are attacked by melee in front of them, most units can make a single one back. There's also plenty of opportunities to use cover in the game to help you keep your units alive, or if you need to keep them for a plan of some kind. Armor is also a factor you need to pay attention to, as someone like a guardsman is not going to be able to make a dent into a dreadnought with his lasgun, but a Lehman Russ will put a hole into it, and then the other units around it as well. One thing I absolutely despise, and it's just a me thing, this is not straight up how bad the game is having to move every single unit one by one. I do play on console, so maybe this isn't as bad on PC. I don't entirely know. I bet it is. It's kind of annoying because in most of these games you can give mass orders or have set orders in some way to make them move to a certain point. But in this, I don't know why you really can't. And on a smaller scale, when you have like 10 max units, it's not really a big deal. But when you get to the 2,000 points, it gets really annoying to where I find myself using things like the Rhino Take, which is a transport take, just to move less units around, and I could just put them in a tank and then move them around. Even though they're supposed to be like support kind of as well, I don't really use them for that, just transport. However, I still enjoy the game immensely, and it's something I play when I either just am talking with my friends or just want to play some tabletop without actually having to chill out my limbs, or if I just want to relax after playing something like Helldivers or more intense games. Overall, I think Battlesector is a decent alternative to tabletop, and it is with multiplayer, so you can play with your friends online instead of having to hope to God either have a space or you have the models ready. I haven't been able to find random games, which I'm sure is both a good or bad thing, but you can find random people online at sometimes. Even with the issues of the game, it is insanely replayable, and I hope they add more armies and content soon, especially since they just updated the more lackluster Planetary Supremacy, which was technically in beta, but it's fine now, it's more or less the same. Go check it out, even if you don't buy all the armies, and remember to like and share this video to your 4K buyers if you're also broke, like mine.